It's 9 o'clock. Happy Friday. How's everybody doing today? Good. I'll take that as a Lynn Hutto. Look at there. Look at there. I've hit the big time now. Welcome to this week's version of Coffee with Carl. I got to tell you, it's a little sad for me today. I have been 3.5 months without wearing a tie, and today I had to put one on, and it is truly depressing. I've done everything to avoid it. So anyway, so don't feel like I do this all the time, Lynn, because I'm over the tie situation. But for those that are new, this is not a regular thing anymore. But anyway, great to have y'all. Let's jump into a few things we got today. And housekeeping. If anybody has a comment, feel free to share it in the chat box. You can always email me at cblackstone@columbiachamber.com. But chat box works for if you want to add to the dialogue today. And anyway, what a week. I tell you, we had such a good conversation last week, and I was trying to figure out what we need to talk about today. And there are a few things that we just got to highlight, and then I'm going to open it back up again. But COVID will not go away. Scary thing, 687 new cases yesterday is unbelievable, and it should scare everybody. Interesting, in Greenville, which is one of the bigger hotspots right now, they had their highest percentage was in the Latino community. And so this is hitting, this is unbelievable where they're hitting anybody, everybody, high school kids at the beach to everywhere. To 687. So the 10 largest days that we've had of COVID cases have been in the month of June. So 3 months into this, and we're still seeing trends high. So face mask, face mask, face mask, wash your hands. I have gotten a little bit slack in sanitizing my hands every hour, but we got to go back to that. But please think about wearing your mask. I know I have left mine and have felt guilty. So now I've got one in my office, one in my house, one in my car. Do not leave home without it. But anyway, for those businesses that are open and really want to reach out and ask y'all to think about joining the pledge. I've got one behind me here, Columbia Chamber pledge of if your business is safe and y'all keep it clean, give people the comfort that y'all are doing everything you can to keep your place COVID clean. I know that Resilient Columbia's got one as well, but you can go to our website. We'll bring you a poster, but you sign up, take the pledge. The number of cases has gone up, but what's really startling, not let me just close with this, is the fact that our positive cases, so we're testing more, no question, but the percentage of tests that are positive has over doubled in a week. So we're testing almost the same, just a little bit, tricked down just a little bit this week, but 14.3% of our cases are positive, which is, I remember we were down in the threes, right? And now we're at 14.3. So y'all be safe on that. Fiasco of fiascos this week. Welcome to Richland County, where we can't get an election right. I am befuddled, bewildered, embarrassed. I don't even know where to keep adding on to that, but I was outraged yesterday, and that doesn't happen very often, but I was outraged when a former Richland County election commissioner said in a public meeting that it was the fault of the Richland County citizens that we had such a mess. If we as citizens of Richland County want a better election, we have to step up and do poll working. That part is fair, but don't blame the taxpayers and the citizens for failure of leadership. So I'll get off my soapbox on that, but I have to give significant props. I don't know these folks, but the people that stood in line till 12:45 in the morning on Wednesday morning, heroes, clap to them. I think I have to question myself if I would do that, and I would be so mad I probably wouldn't. But they stood there and took advantage of their constitutional rights in less than desirable conditions, but for 5 hours or more. Unreal. So, I've just spent a lot of time on the phone this week with elected officials and with folks running for office that lost. The bottom line is we should demand better. And this is where South Carolina is, best way to call it is unique. We have a system that's flawed because there's no accountability. We have, in all seriousness, we have a election commission that is appointed by the delegation to the governor. The governor then appoints them to the commission. They hire a director who then hires the staff. The county elected officials fund them, but they don't have any control over, no accountability to the county. The delegation is where it really should be with the accountability, and they've been meeting once a year. So this is where we've got to step up our efforts as a business community and demand better accountability. I was also very jarred with a comment that some elected officials said that this was a partisan issue. This was a result of partisanship. Absolutely not. There were R's and D's standing in line for a long time. This has nothing to do with partisanship. This is all about accountability and making sure that we have the right people in place to put on elections. We're in 2021. People do this all over the world. This is not rocket science. But I say this too. We really should be outraged, and so I'm not sure what's going to happen with the elections this week. There were a number of issues that were individually in different precincts, names getting left off, paper ballots versus, there were a lot of issues. So I fully expect a lawsuit on this one. But as it stands right now, we've got to hold our county delegation. And Beth Bernstein did call this one, by the way. I want to give her props. She set out back in early March and said, hey, this is a problem. We need to make sure that what's happening and what's going on. Her calls fell on deaf ears. And then again, she reiterated her comments and actually went to the press in April, and she got a meeting. But again, they assured her that things were going well. And so thank you, Beth Bernstein, for thinking through this early on. And she had some friends as well. And there were a number of people that signed on, Nathan and Kirkman and me and others that did, but she sounded the alarm. So thank you, Beth. On that note, no surprise. There were a few surprises locally, but what's really interesting is across the state, 2 state house members got beat, both of which were in the Midlands, one in Richland County, one in Lexington County, which is interesting. And 3 are left to be decided. 3. Now this is out of 170, right? So 2 got beat, 3 are in a runoff. So that's 5 races out of 170. Staggering on a lot of fronts. But big news on county council. I think Ms. Joyce Dickerson, who I really do respect, was defeated by Derek Pugh, who's got a lot of energy and passion. Leadership Columbia class of 2020 right now. He'll do a good job. Runoffs, Chip Jackson narrowly got a runoff. I think he got 49.7% of the vote. So he'll head to a runoff in 2 weeks. Runoff in District 8 with Overture Walker and Hamilton Grant. So that'll be in 2 weeks. Gwen Kennedy and Gretchen Barron have got another runoff as well. So we'll do this again in two weeks or less than 2 weeks. I'm crossing my fingers on an election. So we may end up needing to call some friends and getting volunteers to help. Well, you got to get trained to do polling, but we got to find some poll workers for those elections. I also want to give a great shout out to I glossed over it, but when Dr. Jimmy Bales got beat this week, and Jimmy's done a lot of good work for the county over the years, and so thank him for his service to the state, to Richland County. But Jermaine Johnson is a powerhouse, fun guy. Played basketball at the old College of Charleston, the KON, the College of Knowledge. Go Cougs. But Jermaine is a great guy and will do wonders for this county, so wish him the best. All right, last little bit of news, and then we'll open it up. But if y'all missed this past webinar on Tuesday, we had John Barnes, who happens to be on Forest Acres Town Council, but talked about businesses and COVID. And if you own your own business and are looking at what's next, go back and check that webinar out. He did a really good job, lots of good numbers that I'm a numbers junkie to some degree. And so he gave some great numbers from a new Vistage Wall Street Journal poll that I thought was very, very interesting. And those are on the website as well. So, all right, we really had a good conversation last week, and I have spent the week reflecting a lot. Actually, I left last Thursday with more questions than anything. And that's not I don't think a bad thing, quite frankly. I think it's good. Mainly introspectively asking myself a lot of questions. And then I have been reaching out to a lot of my friends, Black, white, Hispanic, I mean, everybody, just talking. And I think that's the beauty about what's going on right now, is that a lot of people are talking. And now, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we can talk, is what I grew up learning. So hopefully not only are we talking, but we're listening. And so I want to open it up because I had a friend yesterday, we had a board meeting yesterday, and a friend said, you know what, I'm not doing good. I just want y'all to he said this was a board meeting. He goes, I'm not okay with all that's going on. So I'm not okay with the conversation, the tone, the tenor necessarily. I'm not okay with the riots across the country. It's not okay. He's good with the peaceful protests or not. I mean, that's healthy. But I so appreciated the conversation because he was being true and authentic, which I really, really admire. So I want to open up to y'all. What are you thinking? What are you hearing? Where are you in your conversations this week with your friends and family? So I'm trying to see. I don't know if I can unmute everybody, but I'm open to hearing what everybody's thinking today. But y'all can't unmute, by the way. And okay. Well, I think I know y'all are thinking, so I'm giving y'all benefit of the doubt, and it's early, so maybe we need to have a quiet sipping moment of coffee. But the conversations to this point this week have been so good, and really how we move forward as a community. I was talking to my wife. We do talk every day, but reflecting on the week and her conversations with her coworkers, folks that African-American folks that work at the hospital who she has worked with for years. They work together, they eat lunch together, they pray together, they know everything going on between each other's lives. And for them to have conversations this week they've never had before, that's pretty cool. It's sad on one hand that we've never had those conversations, but it's healthy. Thank you, Vince. You took off mute.
Yeah, so I was going to respond to some of that. I don't know if you all can hear me. I'm in a car dealership, so if you can't hear me, let me know. Can you hear me, Carl?
Oh yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things I think that has surfaced as a result of everything that's going on is things that African Americans have been talking about now for generations. Actually, it even manifests itself in healthcare disparities. I'm on the March of Dimes board, and one of the things that they have been challenged with is why is it that African American women, even when income is not a factor, why is it that they go into premature labor and have challenges, even including death during labor, higher than their counterparts, and there is no specific answer that I can give you, but it has always been assumed that it's because of stress, and the stress has been related to racial issues, institutional racial issues. And a few years ago, college did a study, and they found that the average African Americans, and this is what I hope our white counterparts understand, and I really appreciated the conversation last week, particularly the comments from Mr. Odell. But the average African American on a daily basis deals with approximately 6 bouts of racism on a daily basis. And that's somewhat been oblivious to our white counterparts. And I think over time, they believe, oh, they're just talking. That can't be true. Maybe they're just exaggerating. I don't know. But that's the kind of stuff that they've had to deal with. We've had to deal with day after day, year after year. And now people are starting to understand and recognize it and starting to have conversations about it. But there's got to be a what's next. And the what's next is, what are we going to do about some of the institutional challenges that we have across the country, i.e., for instance, having a citizens review committee for law enforcement. If that had occurred, in my opinion, Mr. Chauvin would have either been fired and Mr. Floyd would still be alive, because they would have not allowed 18, 19 offenses. And that's not unusual. The African-American community is not against law enforcement. They're against officers who believe that it is that it's in their power to hurt and even kill African Americans at will. And that's not new. This is something that has been going on for decades. If you look at healthcare, why is it that you can live on the same block in the same zip code and have a different life expectancy, have different health outcomes? If you look at schools, why is it that traditionally African American children are the ones that are suspended, expelled? If you look at business and industry, why are we historically the last hired and the first fired? I mean, you can go up and down the line. And so we've got to start to have even more meaningful dialogue, but there's got to be a review of policies and practices and procedures that are causing some of these things to occur. I'll make this last comment. The people that I hang out with, they're not interested in dealing with racism because they know you can't necessarily change a person's heart. But what they are interested in is, how do we deal with institutional racism? What are those policies and practices that laws, rules that could be changed, that could make a difference, like some of the things that I mentioned?
And Vince, go ahead.
Carl, this is Lynn Hutto, and I'd like to comment on the 2 things that Vince said. First of all, as a Black female mother, when I was carrying both of my children, I actually prayed to God that I would have girls. And I prayed because I have brothers, sisters, brothers, uncles, fathers, grandfathers that went through so many different instances of racism. And for that reason, I prayed for girls. I had 2 boys. And I said, God obviously knows best. And so I dedicated my life to trying to make sure that the things that my children went through, I work in the employment arena. And so I made, from the spot that I sat, I made sure that I could have some impact on how people, preferably Black males, were being treated, and to see that they were treated fairly in the arena that I sat in. And so I'll leave that comment there. The next thing I'll comment on, and I come from a place of having worked in law enforcement as a human resource director for SLED for almost 14 years. I retired in 2011. The law enforcement accredited agencies, to my knowledge, have what they call an early warning system. And I could probably, without facts, could probably tell you that a lot of these law enforcement officers who had problems probably showed up in those systems if those systems were actually carried out the way they should have been. So I say that we need to look into those systems and see where those people show up. And the way it works is that you have about 5 or 6 factors that law enforcement officers, administrators look at. One of which is car accidents, use of force, performance issues, and the like. And when those officers encounter any one of those issues, they show up in that system, and then there's a review board that actually looks at them and decide what needs to happen. Is it a training issue? Is it a conduct issue? Is it an ethical issue? What kind of issue is it? And so there are systems in the accreditation of law enforcement that actually addresses those systems. But I think we need to challenge our law enforcement organizations to make sure those systems are adequately in place and actually used the way they ought to be used. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Lynn. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Thanks, Lynn. I'm glad you're here, by the way. What other comments we got today? We've got some new faces too, by the way. We're glad to have, see my friend Craig Witherspoon here. Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon, for being on. He did a great job last week during graduation. I may have melted a little bit, but that was nothing that he had anything to do with. It may have been a little tad warm, but a smooth graduation for Richland 1 students in an hour, I may add, which I think we could get used to that. So congratulations.
Thank you, Carl, and congratulations to you for your graduate this year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. What other comments we got? I'm gonna start calling somebody out maybe.
Hi, Carl. I think what we need to do is, I think it's great that that people are talking, that some people are talking anyway. And I loved your comments at the beginning that you're hearing conversations that you hadn't heard before. So the question is, now what? What do we do? This is not a quick fix. It's been, what, hundreds of years in the making. What now? How do we address it? And I think it's up to each one of us individually in our businesses to address it within our businesses. And I love what you said, Lynn, about the police departments. There may be positions or there may be procedures in place. Are the procedures being used? You know, if they're being used, that's great. But if you've got an officer that a lot of people like, is that person going to be treated the same as somebody they don't like? So I think the big question is, now what?
Yeah.
I wanted to speak on that. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm Yashika Mack, and I'm fairly new to everybody else. Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm thinking, because I'm a little bit younger than most of you guys on here, not that young, but Miss Lynn, I was just curious about her age between her and myself, because I noticed she said she had 2 sons, and I too have 2 sons, and the conversations, you know, if you look at us both, I think it's a good bit, it's a gap between ages that we're having the same conversation, the same fear. Right now, I am grateful to the fact that the young people have caused the conversations, because even with you bringing it to light right now and opening it up, that's something, you know, last year, the year before, I mean, just recently, it would not have been heard of. And so people would have still been looking as if this is not an issue in America. However, I'm grateful for the fact that we are having decent conversations, because as long as we're talking, things can change. Now, it's not going to be an overnight fix, of course, because it didn't take overnight for us to get here. But I believe that we can do better, because now we're not turning our people that we need the help from, which are the people who don't look like me, that we need to recognize and see these disparities, and to say, you know what, hey, that's not right. Hey, you know, I'm listening. I'm listening, my brother. I'm listening, my sister, because that is the only way. You can't listen and also listen and already have your opinion of, you know, already have your opinion, you know. And I think right now is that more and more we're listening, we're understanding, we're trying to have compassion, some empathy, some sympathy for people who have been crying out for a long time. The one issue that I have, and I can tell you how I'm doing. No, I'm not doing too well, because I have an 11-year-old Black son and I have a 19-year-old Black son. My 19-year-old has already been targeted. And I would have never thought that here it is 2020 that my son, I get a little bit emotional because he's my son. But yeah, we've had to deal with that. So again, I'm grateful that we are having the conversations, and I can honestly have faith that my kids will grow up and be able to make it in America and not be just a target because they're Black. My little one is 11. All of us in my family, and I'm just giving you some personal insight because I don't know if you all have really heard it from a personal perspective. From a mother, I'm 45. My kids are all fair. We're pretty light-skinned, a family, except for my 11-year-old. My 11-year-old, his father was a little bit darker, so he picked up that side. So at 5 years old, my son says to me, "Mom, you know, you guys are white. Why am I, you know, Black?" He already started seeing issues with his skin color, that he was going to have problems. And I try my best to make sure that we don't stick to that, because even in our communities, and it's the different shades that also target us. So again, you know, I just want to give you a personal perspective on things, to say that sometimes you're doing good, but sometimes you're just not doing good, because the conversation have to be had, but the fear is still there. And until we can remove the fear, there, you know, we're still gonna have issues. We're still gonna have ways. I read a lot of the comments on social media, and starting today, I'm gonna stop that, because it's very, very hurting, some of the things that people say just because other people are not having the same type of lifestyle or the same type of warranties that you're given. Again, I know I said this 1,000 times, but thank you for giving me the opportunity. I just want to let you guys know from a personal perspective on being Black in America. I'm not ashamed of that, with 2 Black sons, and I'm not ashamed of that either. And if you ever want to really talk about, you know, what is it like from a female perspective, raising 2 Black sons, I'm open for conversation. I'm open for dialogue. And if it's something that you don't understand, it's like, oh, hey, you know, then ask. You know, that's the biggest thing. Ask the question to us, because we don't mind talking about it. It's when you just play our knees down that hurts. Like, right. We didn't experience what we've been doing this for a long time. And like, the reason why I pointed out the age difference between myself and Miss Lynn, because to understand, we're not making up this thing. It is serious. I'm 45 and I don't know how old she is. I have a 19 and 11-year-old, and we're having the same conversations. We're having the same fear. And so I'm glad that it is out front, as sometimes the ugly beast stands. But he's ugly and he has to be addressed. He's the elephant in the room, the elephant in the nation, the elephant in the world. And he's being addressed right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I flat out am not going to ask Lynn how old she is, for the record, okay? But
please don't.
Lynn has her hand up. I'm not asking that question, but feel free to respond, Lynn.
But for the record, I'm proud to say I'm 60 years old.
Woo-hoo! 60 years young.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Beautiful 60.
Thank you, Yashika. I have my 2 young men. I have 2 airmen. They're both in the Air Guard. So thank God that I have been able to get them this far successfully. My young men are 29 and 31. I also have stepsons that are older than they are. But I just want to say that I commend you for speaking up. And so I guess that kind of adds some confirmation for me. But I just want to say that I have been a part of the Community Relations Council for probably since 2012. And one of the things that we've been doing, we've been having and trying to have these conversations. And it's unfortunate that we struggle for funding. And now as I sit and find the CRC in the position that they're in, we are actually in the process of hiring a new ED. I'll just say to you guys as community leaders, support that organization. We've been trying to have these conversations despite and in spite of a whole lot of challenges. But one of the things that we failed at, and this is totally my opinion, is that we fail to reach young people in this day and time. So one of the things, Yashika, and I'd love to contact you and get in touch with your 19-year-old, is we're looking at arming with information and building an army of young adults. And I feel like that's important now because you also mentioned the gap. And I also feel the same way. There's been a gap, and the gap I feel is where we fail to bring them along. But in a sense, I feel like that gap has been the impetus to what has caused them to speak out at this time. So if I can say anything else, I just ask for you guys' support of that organization. We're actually in our 56th year of operation, of doing just what needs to be done. And I still say it's a shame, as others have said, that here we are in 2020, still trying to get people to understand that Black lives and all lives do matter. So thank you all for allowing me to speak.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it. Well, I don't want to stop the conversation after it took a while to start, but we are running short on a little bit of time. But anybody else want to chime in?
Hey, Carl, can I ask a question?
Absolutely, Ted Creech.
I'm just wondering, is it possible to get an understanding from our local law enforcement agencies what systems they have in place, like systems like Lynn referred to earlier? Are there citizen review boards or other review boards that are in place that cases or circumstances go before? What kind of training systems do they have in place? And what do the leaders of those organizations think could be done better within their organizations? I mean, everyone, regardless of how good an organization is, it always looks for, if it's truly good, it always looks for continuing improvement.
That's a good question. And I've talked to Leon and Sheriff Lott, as well as Chief Holbrook. And by the way, Chief Holbrook was kind enough to join us for our board meeting yesterday and talk about what's going on with his department in the last couple of weeks. And before COVID, by the way, most crime stats were way down in the city of Columbia. That's really positive news. They've increased their technology. They have, they've taken a bunch of guns off the streets since COVID started in March. But he was truly, I have to give him, I mean, he's a man of few words in a lot of ways, but he was really raw from what took place the last few weeks. I mean, it was really emotional for him and his department. So I appreciate him taking the time and sharing that with us. I'll reach back out, but both of them have, if my memory serves me correct, a citizens review panel or some type of panel in place for both the Sheriff's Department and the city of Columbia. Now, I don't know those results, Ted, but that's a good question that I'll reach out to Jennifer Timmons, their public affairs officer, to see what if they've got some stats that they can release on those review panels. Good question.
Carl, this is Rachael Fulmer. I appreciate the conversation a lot, and I think those would be really great topics that we could have further discussion about, and have more members of the chamber just being able to listen in for sure. I'm sure it was really helpful to the board members, but I think as a chamber member, I'd like to hear it too. So I hope maybe we can get them involved. But I also would like to see how this extends to our schools as well. And I think there's some conversation to be had. How are we having these conversations with the children, with the teachers, with the staff, making sure that content's appropriate, things like that our kids are learning. So I think many of us have children that are in the school systems around the various school districts. And so it'd be nice to hear a little bit more about that as well.
Okay, great. I just wrote that down for topics of conversation to go forward. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
Ted,
Carl, this is Adam.
hey, Adam.
This is Adam Vance. I just wanted to expand on kind of the school system things. Both my kids have gone through Richland 1. It's good to see Dr. Witherspoon on here. They went to Meadowfield Elementary. My daughter just finished Hand, and now they'll both be at Dreer. But same with me, the way I grew up in Durham County, North Carolina. And I can't speak much for sort of understanding what it's like, except I want to see how to kind of bridge the gap from childhood into college and then into adulthood, because I see my kids have had friends of all different races since early on in church through school. And then same with me growing up in sports. A lot of our friends on Facebook are of all races, but in adulthood, do we hang out a lot together? We see each other at reunions and things like that. And I work with all different types of people at all times. And I don't have a social life. I'm an event. So a lot of people I hang out with are at work at all times. But the only thing I can remember, I was raised by a single mother. And I have to call her a strong woman. She raised 2 boys 4 years apart. My brother's 4 years older than me. We both played sports the entire time, wide open. But I remember her coming home once when I was little, and she was furious because on a credit application, she was asked, I guess, family members, I think she was applying for an Amex, and this was in the 70s. And they wanted her younger brother, 10 years her junior, to co-sign for her. And I thought her head was going to explode. I mean, she had long job history, but they wanted her baby brother to co-sign for her. So that's about as close as I can remember on that. And then her experiencing that, going on throughout her professional career at times, just I guess being held against her for being a single woman at home. But that's about as close as I could get. But the only thing I just wanted to add was somehow going from childhood into adulthood, it seems we're all playing together in the sandbox kind of thing. And then once we start getting adulthood, we maybe drift off. And you mentioned last week, we were talking about church. Church seems to be a majority all one or the other. And then that's the same at my church too. We have all races and people from all over the world there, but it's predominantly Caucasian. So I guess that's just what I wanted to add was, from childhood into adulthood, that sort of seems to be the split that I see. Thank you.
No doubt, sociology and learned behavior at some point through our lives. Thanks for your comments, Adam and Rachel. Thank you. We've got lots of work to do, and so we'll get some topics going on for the next couple of weeks. We are going to meet usually historically in July. We don't do a whole lot outwardly facing at the chamber, but we're going to keep holding these things and keep doing our webinar series. We'll take the week of the 4th off and celebrate our country as we should, but we will we'll keep content coming. So I want to thank y'all very much for spending your Friday morning with us. And
hey, Carl.
Yes, sir.
Carl, can I make one last comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I want to, I missed part of the call. I was talking with the guy at the car dealership, but I want to follow up right quick on Mr. Odell's comment, because I think he's right about what's next, and you all probably talked about that. And I think that's the key question. And so I'll answer that question with this response. In the Bible, in the book of Ephesians, it talks about everything that's ever been done has been done before, and everything that's been said has been said before. There's nothing new under the sun. And so what that has always led me to pursue is, in my view, not pursue the answers, but pursue the questions. And I think if we ask the right questions, then the answers will be revealed to us. And so sometimes, even as we sit in our chairs and in our offices, we may not know what to do, but we know, but we can flip that over and we can say there's some things that we know should never happen. For instance, unfortunately, our country has moved when there's been a death. The death of my good friend Clemente Pinckney led us to really get serious about removing the Confederate flag. And now the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis has led us to take a look at certain things. Let's just agree that we shouldn't have another death, unnecessary death in this country. And we know that's a question that if we ask that question, that can be answered very, very easily. And so while we may not know necessarily what road to take, what path to take, what answers, but we do know there's some questions and some things that we should never allow to happen. And I would just charge us with that individually and start to work on some things collectively. While we may not know the answers, we do know we have the right people, and we do know that we can ask the right questions, which will lead us to the right answer. Thanks.
Valid. Very good points. So thank y'all again. And we're going to keep having these dialogues. I'm still going to be doing a lot of listening as well. And, but we appreciate your thoughts, your insights. And for those speaking up, we really, really appreciate it today. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back here next Friday with Coffee with Carl. So thanks so much. We'll see you real soon.